Told, by the way, that the attendance tonight, 72,017, third largest crowd in MLS history, which makes it the third largest crowd in Atlanta United history. Left to right drive by Guzan, falls right to Herrera in the middle third, and then Gressel steps up to knock it away from him and off Herrera, now for a throw. Now Gressel throws it right in, and it's left off to Tito with the drive, and it's off the post and in!
Quick throw. Julian Gressel defensively does the job, earns the throw, takes it quickly, and a little feint play.
You're trying to get into the contract.
But I'll never forget, there's times where I've been coming back from scouting trips and it's early morning at 4 o'clock and I'm listening to 92.9 and Jason will be on a show talking about Atlanta United. He really is someone that lives and breathes the sport and he's been a fantastic ambassador for our club.
I think you're going to see Atlanta United set a higher bar for Miguel Almiron to go.
So I was very nervous the first time I got to meet the Godfather, Jason Longshore, because he's been around Atlanta soccer forever, it seems. An absolute legend here, and rightly so, and he deserves the respect, and he gets it from all the Atlanta United fans.
Listening to the first one, it's like, he was born for this. He does such a flawless job.
Jason wants it done right. He wants it done well, and if you're going to say something, you better have facts to back it up.
I'd be hard-pressed for someone to find me someone in the city of Atlanta who is reliable as Jason, is knowledgeable as Jason, and is as passionate as Jason when it comes to soccer and the city of Atlanta.
Growing up, I guess I was probably pretty typical. I was a big Braves fan. I was a huge Georgia football fan. My parents helped start the Riverdale Athletic Association and we're always around sports. So I actually learned how to read from the sports page. My mom would always read the paper to me in the morning when I was really little. That was kind of how everything started with me from an education standpoint, was sports. It was just what drove me. I grew up reading Furman Bisher and people like that in the Atlanta Journal and Atlanta Constitution, and I grew up, watching people like Jeff Hullinger on TV and that side of it. So it was all just part of the mix for me. I remember when I decided to play it for the first time. I'd played soccer in gym class. I knew I had at least experienced it up to that point, and spring of '86, I just turned 9 and I wanted to play soccer because they had soccer there and decided to give it a try. I really liked it, but I just didn't have a context for it. And that was what was weird to me as a kid then, was when I played basketball, I wanted to be like Dominique Wilkins or Doc Rivers or whoever from the Hawks. And when we play football in the neighborhood, you wanted to be Herschel Walker or Steve Bartkowski or whoever. I didn't have that for soccer, so it felt different. But for me, what hooked me was that summer seeing the World Cup. Like, wow, okay, now I can actually watch real soccer, and this is what it is. Now I'm hooked. And I would go to the local library and check out the books that they had, probably 4 about soccer at that time, and read them cover to cover every few months. And that was all we had. Reading Soccer America magazine was a big thing, and whatever I could find, I would devour it. There just wasn't that much. I was pretty introverted as a kid and wasn't very just open and going out and meeting people and stuff. And soccer was really one of the ways that I did, because I felt comfortable on a soccer field.
I've known Jason for 25 years. We met at Eagles Landing High School in McDonough, Georgia. He was on the boys soccer team and I was on the girls soccer team. And there was a lot of support for each other's teams. He was very passionate about soccer. And for the South Side in the 90s, that level of passion was not normally seen. To be a South Sider and to love soccer that much, that was a little different.
I ended up playing on a team that was state ranked, and we beat Marist and Westminster my senior year. And my 1 year of high school soccer was a blast. I wouldn't trade it for anything. When I went to the University of Georgia, I thought I was going to do journalism. That was kind of where my head was. Growing up reading sports pages and all of that fascinated me, and I wanted to write and tell those stories.
In college, he had his own personal fax machine that he would use to take stats of Atlanta Ruckus games and then fax them into the team.
So the Atlanta Ruckus story was kind of crazy. There was an email list that I found, the North American Soccer email list. I wrote match reports for that email list. So people in other parts of the country wanted to know how Atlanta did in the A-League. I would write a report about it. The new general manager in 1997 read my reports and brought me on to write the match reports for the team and write match previews. I'm excited just because I get to go to games for free now, and I'm getting a chance to interview players and that side of it. So it was a really cool, thing that happened, and I never expected it. I'm 20 years old. Getting close to the summer break, Gabe Pasquarello, who was the GM, said, would you like to come into the office during the summer? Well, a couple weeks after I started coming in, my unpaid internship with no college credit has turned into a job. It turned into more than just writing match reports, it turned into media relations. I was writing all the stories about the team and calling local TV, local radio, and sending the faxes out, well, everything that would come out from the team. Probably the first time I felt like I was really getting through was a conversation with Jeff Hollinger, who had been in Atlanta, I think at that point, for 20 years in sports. That was really rewarding at the time. I didn't see any limits. I didn't see a reason why I couldn't do what I was doing. Even though I know I was the youngest media relations person in the A-League at that time, it felt like getting into the business of sports was a little more of a closed shop. I felt like I kind of kicked the door down and just kept going and kept running with it as long as I could. That off season from the fall of '97 to kickoff of '98, I was scouting players for a college draft. I was signing a sponsorship deal with MindSpring, so we had a website, writing reports, going to league meetings. We went to the draft, we did the off-season meetings, doing all these things that a 20, 21-year-old shouldn't be doing. But there was nobody else. I mean, it was just, I felt like the team was going to die if I didn't. I wanted to keep it alive, and I wanted to keep it going as long as I could. The owners who ended up becoming the Atlanta Silverbacks bought it at the end of that '98 season, and they went in their own direction. They hired their own people. That was a little bit of a kick to the gut at that point. But looking back on it, I know that that team stayed alive because of that summer and doing all that. I worked in retail music. Thinking anything other than music, I couldn't have done it. But I'm really glad I did, because I think it brought me out of my shell a little bit. Having to do customer service and talk to people on a regular basis. It was great to do it about music because it was something I was passionate about. But I was missing being involved in soccer in some way.
He emailed me and said, hey, I'm interested in getting back into the soccer thing. What can I do? How can I get involved? I really like what you guys do.
I knew soccer in the streets from my time with the Atlanta Ruckus because we did camps and clinics for them. I knew what the organization did. I knew the ideas behind it. And I reached out to Jill, and she had an opportunity to really create a part-time role based around communications and media.
How he became full-time was we had enough budget to have someone part-time be a grant writer. So he basically became communications and grants director. And we would get into these very long and drawn out discussions about the philosophical side of youth soccer. Because of our conversations, it was pretty clear that his encyclopedic knowledge was not just superficial. It was really about a philosophy behind it that I think drove a lot of what we were able to accomplish even with a very small team and very limited resources.
He never stayed only in the operations or administrative part of the game. He came to my practices, he started picking my brain, he started asking me stuff, we started watch video, analyzing stuff, and then that's when I also started respecting him. He really was very rational and very logical about the situations, and he used a lot of common sense. And then really stood out to me that he really was understanding the game, and making really good points about tactical situations, about approach and about strategic situations, how you approach a game, how you present a game, and how you solve a game when certain circumstances arise or happen in the game.
I knew the game as a fan. I knew the game as maybe a journalist, but I didn't know the game as a coach. Working with Ricardo at Soccer in the Streets was huge. I think he's one of the best coaches in the city of Atlanta. Being able to watch him at work and take some of that to work with Estudiantes, which was our team in College Park and East Point, was, incredibly rewarding. And I saw the game differently. I still see the game differently.
I think his heart was really in the coaching more so than anything. And he really developed a bond with those kids.
First time I met a coach, I call him coach. Right away, I knew he was a good person. You just saw it in him. I'm a very hardworking, responsible, calm person. And, that's something that I admire him for, teaching me something like that. He's actually a person that's very influential in my life, and I'm super thankful to have him.
He was really easygoing, he was really supportive. Every kid liked him. It wasn't like, what can I do to improve my skill on the field, but also off the field, like anything with career-wise, school-wise. He was even like a father figure to some of the kids.
Coaching a team of Mexican boys and working with Ricardo from Costa Rica, and then we had so many Argentines and Uruguayans and Colombians around that team, kind of getting that full flavor of what the Latin game is all about. It's helped me a ton now. I think I understand maybe some of the culture and the things around Atlanta United, a lot more than I ever would have if I hadn't had that experience.
Once the announcement for founding members was made, Jason put down his deposit.
I knew enough about how seriously Arthur took his service to the community in a lot of ways, and I knew that he would do it right.
I think the whole thing coming to fruition was just a matter of the perfect storm. Everything was right at the time. The conditions were right. People were primed for it. They were hungry for it. It was a lot of people putting in the hours and the sweat equity over those years.
When the hires started and you're seeing like top level people come into this team, with Darren Eales and then Carlos Bocanegra, you have a pretty good sense that it's gonna be not just successful, but that it would be done for the long term. And that's the big difference.
It was really fortunate for us that coming as a brand new team trying to set up in the city and to have an organization like Soccer in the Streets that had been embedded in the community, trying to do all the sorts of things that Atlanta United wanted to do. And then to have someone like Jason who, as I learned quite quickly, was an encyclopedia of knowledge on soccer in Atlanta. Someone who had that history, had those connections, and was someone that could speak to that hidden depth of soccer that was in Atlanta. It became evident after I met him, and what Jason was for me was he was a sounding board as we were building the club. And I think that was what his real value to me early on, in that he knew soccer and he, most importantly, knew the city and what had happened before.
My mom was in assisted living by this stage and really starting to have some health issues. We had to figure out what that was going to look like long term for her and what might happen. My dad couldn't really navigate that process, so I felt like I had to. It was really hard. I mean, it was a point with Soccer in the Streets. This is after Atlanta United's been announced, and I'd been really involved in kind of building that relationship from the beginning along with a lot of the board members. And I knew that if it was done right, it could transform soccer in the city and transform the city, to be perfectly honest. It was really hard to walk away from that, but I had to for my mom. I kind of knew where it was going and felt like this is something I have to do, and I'll figure the rest out as I go, but I have to do this. So I stepped away from Soccer in the Streets in beginning of the summer of 2016.
I know it was hard because you're talking about a full-time gig that you were a part of for 10 years. So, it's got to be intimidating both financially and just a life decision where the change is so dramatic.
I was not surprised that he was doing it, that he would put family first and move back to the South Side even when his career was in Atlanta.
It was tough because, I knew, even though it hadn't necessarily been diagnosed, I kind of knew that she didn't have a whole lot of time left at that point. So we were able, through a lot of work, to get her into a nursing home where she was able to get a little bit better care, and she passed away in October.
I'm sure he knew that it was the right thing to do, and even afterwards we talked about it. He doesn't regret doing that because it gave him that time.
The fact that I was able, one, to help take better care of her, and then two, to spend more time with her. I'll never get that time back. It kind of put me on a different path that I don't think I would have found otherwise. So, I have to thank her for that. Around that time, you had independent media kind of covering the team. Rob Usry, the manager of Dirty South Soccer on the SB Nation blog, was just incredibly welcoming and knew of me because I'd written some things for him before, but knew kind of what was going on and just basically said, as much as you want to write. I did a daily column, and it was therapeutic in a lot of ways. And one, it helped me find my voice. It helped me figure out kind of really truly what Atlanta soccer is all about, what people are thinking as Atlanta United is coming into fruition and signing players, and what is Atlanta United going to be. I was able to write about it every day, and I was able to completely be in tune with it. I don't know if I would have got through everything as well if I hadn't had that opportunity to stay connected.
I get a call one day from Jason who says, "Hey, do you have time for lunch this afternoon?" We get pizzas and we're just sitting there, and he says, "I want to do a podcast." He said, "This team's coming in." He said, "There's really one podcast in town. I want to do something. You work in radio. Can we figure something out?" So I put together a couple of ideas.
Early January of 17, we started Soccer Down Here and decided to go daily with a podcast, which nobody else was doing.
Bases dropped on a Monday morning of Soccer Down Here. It's an overreaction Monday.
Coming into doing SDH, for me, it's an education. And it's my master's class, and it's got to be done right, and it's got to be done well. And that's what I really appreciate about Jason, is that He will be a tremendous teacher for anyone who wants to listen and learn. And for me, I couldn't be any more thankful for that opportunity.
We reached out to a radio station down in Brunswick, ESPN Coastal, and their owner, Charlie, was getting on board with soccer. He had stations kind of up and down the coast. The Carolina Challenge Cup was going to be the first preseason tournament for Atlanta United. Charlie was able to get the rights to broadcast it on ESPN Coastal, and he hired John and I to call it. John had background as play-by-play. I'd never called a game before, but I'd grown up watching games and listening to games, and I loved the idea of soccer on the radio because it hadn't happened in Atlanta since the Chiefs days. To be a part of it, I'm like, okay, this is pretty cool. This is gonna be the first Atlanta United game on the radio. It felt more natural than I thought it would. I thought it would be harder and take more reps for it to feel right, and honestly, about midway through the first half, it just felt like I was talking about a game. It didn't feel like I was trying to act a certain way. It didn't feel uncomfortable. It felt like I was just being me talking into a mic. So the next day, as we were driving back from Charleston, we talked to Tim Zalowski at A&B, who said that they were really close on a radio deal. I just knew that I wanted to be around it in some form or fashion, even if it was just podcasting or whatever. I wanted to be around.
We had the opportunity to do a radio broadcast with a very prominent station, 92.9, the game in Atlanta. So as we were investigating into who we could have for that, Jason's name kept coming up.
We just thought, look, we did it in a lot of areas as we built the club. You can take a chance. Let's take a punt on Jason.
At this point, it's Thursday, the opener's on Sunday. We're gonna hire you, be at Bobby Dodd tomorrow for media day, and the game's on Sunday, and we'll figure it all out. So this feels natural to me. This is my life. This is my professional life. We'll figure it out as we go. So it's great. I mean, I loved it. This was the first game for Atlanta United. Nobody knew what Bobby Dodd Stadium would be like. Walking up to the stadium and seeing so many people in red and black and gold and that whole feel, seeing so many jerseys, blew my mind. Walking through campus and seeing tailgates and stuff, I'm like, this is big. This is really cool. But once you get into the stadium, you're in the press box, kind of block things out, and there's nerves, yeah, because this is the first time that I'm on a really big station in Atlanta, and I knew people would be listening, and just, it had been in the paper the day before, so I was like, wow, okay, this is big. This is cool. I got in early enough that I just could kind of watch the stands fill up and see okay, one, it's gonna be packed. Two, it's a lot of people here, not just for an event, but here because they care and they're passionate about this team. Then you start to hear it and hear the chants and hear the songs, and that takes it to another level. It really didn't all the way hit me until I got back to my car after everything, and I sat in the parking deck for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, I don't know, just kind of thinking back to it, wow, this happened. I just called a game on the radio for a new Atlanta professional soccer team, and there were 55,000 people there, and it was a really good game, and it was a really big deal. Atlanta United took that to a whole nother level, and you could see that at Bobby Dodd that first day, that you had songs in Spanish. You had people from all backgrounds, all walks of life in that venue. Atlanta United, I think up until that day, was a concept, and it was an idea, and it felt like a soccer team name, and that was something that a lot of people said to me. It feels like the right name for a soccer team, and that's cool. To see it play out that day made it truly feel United.
He'll talk about an offense and he'll describe it to an SEC football team or a basketball analogy. Jason has that ability of tying it to Atlanta, tying it to cultural moments that have happened in the city, and I think that really helps when we're trying to evangelize and spread the gospel of Atlanta United. He's someone that's got a really great gift of storytelling and making sort of analogies that people can actually connect with.
Game day at Mercedes-Benz is just an amazing place to be. And you're gonna meet people who have had a different life than you, a different experience than you, speak a different language, come from a different background, and you're gonna be wearing the same shirt, and you're gonna be singing the same songs. And I don't know if you get that anywhere else. I don't know if you can bottle that. It's crazy to think of this as successful because a couple of days before the season started last year, I didn't know I'd be doing it. And then it was just absolutely flying by the seat of my pants last year doing it. I always want to do better, and I try to listen and watch as much as I can.
I had the pleasure of working with them in Columbus when Dan Gargan was away, and it was a joy. It was incredible to work with Jason and just to see his knowledge of the game, his involvement, his enthusiasm for the team too. I'm a wonderful fan. I might be the president of the Jason Longshore fan club.
It's exciting to see him on television and to know he deserves that. I think it's fantastic and it doesn't surprise me at all. And I'm just glad that he's getting recognition because he worked really hard for a long time.
Whether it be on his social channels, whether it be on his daily podcast and radio shows that he does, if you listen to him on our radio broadcast, you're learning new things.
I hadn't had somebody teaching me on a weekly basis, essentially. Here's what you should be looking for. Here's why Atlanta did what they did in this game. I wouldn't know what was going on. So he has really been a teacher of the game for me.
Atlanta United wouldn't be where we are without him being on radio interviews, being on the calls. We felt so strongly about the work that he did last year that we've traveled Mike Conti and Jason Longshore on every game now. That's not common in MLS for your radio to travel to all the games.
Lending a voice to soccer in this region, in this city, is something that I never would have guessed I'd be doing. I guess I found it a little bit with my time with the Ruckus. I found it maybe more with soccer in the streets in a completely different way. And now I've been able to kind of combine everything and lend a voice to what professional soccer is like here, what community soccer is like here, the power the sport has for kids in need, the power the sport has for the city.
Now Atlanta United is the most talked about team in the US, in North America, and certainly one of the coolest teams in world soccer right now. And Jason Longshore is a permanent fixture among both the journalistic side of things as the colour analyst with the radio team and amongst the fans as well.
From my perspective, he's one of the great guys that I've met in Atlanta. Really nice guy, a professional, works really hard, but ultimately a guy that you just love to chat to. I'm happy for Jason, but we're even happier because we've got someone like Jason on our side who's part of Atlanta United, part of spreading soccer in Atlanta and the whole Southeast. He deserves all the success that he's getting.